Welcome to Salt Lake City. Вітаємо вас з міста Солених Озер, Сполучених Штатах Америки. На цьому піку в 1847 році перші поселенці робили свої ескізи майбутнього міста Солт Лейк. Ми не випадково починаємо знайомство з північноамериканським континентом зі штату Юта. Бо саме тут знаходиться чи не найбільша кількість природних пам'яток та заповідників. Отож залишайтеся з нами.
It's a matter of a plain area that has been separated and pulled apart, leaving an island, mountain range in the middle of a great basin. And then Lake Bonneville, which was formed 16,000 years ago.
Huge lake.
You know, this was just a small island at that time. Of course, the water would have been over our heads now.
Right.
And then once it breached and broke out 6,000 years ago, you know, and drained, Great Salt Lake was the remnant of Lake Bonneville.
Wow.
But in 1845, John C. Fremont and his group came to explore and to map the largest of the islands in Great Salt Lake, Antelope Island. And of course, it didn't have a white man name at that time or an Anglo name. It was called Parabina by the Native Americans.
Right.
Which means antelope breeding place.
Right.
Well, when Fremont and his group came onto the island, they found 28,000 acre island with lots of fresh water, 40 freshwater springs on an island surrounded by salt water.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
And they found an abundance of wildlife, including a lot of pronghorn or antelope, as we call them. So in the late 1960s, a group of people were able to convince the owner of the North 2,000 acres to sell if it became a state park.
Right.
The problem was there was no access to the island other than by boat.
Right.
So some of the political figures from Davis County and Utah joined together to build the causeway and to connect the island with the mainland. That was finished in 1969 and the park was opened in 1970. It wasn't until 1983 that the rest of the island was purchased and the entire island became state park, all 28,000 beautiful acres.
Beautiful acres.
The wonderful thing was back in the the early 1890s, 1893 to be exact, several bison were brought onto Antelope Island, and those bison...
Later 1800s.
Yeah, those bison were brought here, and they did very well on this island home. We now manage a herd of about 500 bison on the island. Right now, with their babies, we have about 700.
Oh, wow.
But also, we're the home of about 300 mule deer.
Mule deer.
And we also have about 100 bighorn sheep. And those are the large ungulates that we have on the island. But there's also bobcat, coyotes, porcupine, badger, lots of rabbits, both hares and cottontail, little water beetles that are also living in the water. And these three species feed thousands and thousands of shorebirds and other animals who feed off the algae and bacteria in the lake.
Birds.
but there are more nesting California seagulls here than there are in California.
Oh.
Antelope Island is famous for the visitors. We get about 300,000 visitors a year.
Right.
Those visitors come, number one, to see the scenic beauty of the island.
Oh yes.
The
It's
view
incredible.
from the island and the views on the island are
Gorgeous.
incredible.
Yes.
But then secondly, they come to see the abundant wildlife.
Yes.
The bison, probably the most prevalent,
Right.
but hundreds and hundreds of people
Yes.
come you know, on a weekly basis to see the shorebirds.
Right.
We're a bird watcher heaven. And so we
Yes,
get a
you
lot of
are.
people that come for that. But we also, not only, the third item is for recreation. We're the best place to enjoy Great Salt Lake.
Take
And
a
so
good
people
hike, yeah.
will hike down, they'll wade and float in the salty waters of Great Salt Lake.
So people do come to
Oh yes,
to swim, to the dip.
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And we have 36 miles of hiking, biking, and horseback riding trails.
This is the Bonneville Salt Flats in Salt Lake, or just outside of Salt Lake in Utah. And it's the fastest land speed area in the country for wheel-driven cars. This meet that we're at right now is the Mike Cook Shootout, where they invite in the very fastest cars in the country to go head-to-head to try to set new records. So far this week we've had 4 cars run over 400 miles an hour, and one of them took away a 45-year-old record that was set by the Summer Brothers in 1965.
Last week.
Yeah, it was the record that they beat was 409 miles an hour, and this week they ran 414.
Wow.
It was the Charles Neerberg. Thousands of years ago, this was a very large lake that extended all the way from the mountains behind us to where Salt Lake City is today.
Right.
And over the last 4,000 years or so, it has evaporated away to just a salt pan. About 2/3 of the year, this area is flooded by water a few inches deep.
Right.
And then in the summertime it evaporates away to a hard pan of salt, and it creates a perfectly flat environment to run on. In fact, it's so flat here that you can see the curvature of the earth.
All right. So if we look far away, we don't see the bottom of the mountains,
No,
right?
in fact, this mountain down here in the end is sometimes referred to as Floating Mountain. Late in the afternoon, with the mirage effect, it'll appear to float
Right.
on a lake. Standing where you are, you can only see about 1.5 to 2 miles before you reach the horizon.
Right.
But the race course that these cars are running on is a 13-mile long course.
13 mile.
And in the center, in the exact center of it, they have a measured kilometer and a measured mile. That they have 6 miles to accelerate, 1 mile to run the record through the time traps, and then 6 miles to slow back down.
And 6 miles to slow down. Oh wow, that's
And since they're required by the regulations to do back-to-back runs in opposite directions, what they typically do is they start down at the mountain end, they run down to the pits at this end, where all their tools and spare parts are,
right.
and then they
Run
do
back.
the repairs and then run back.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
знаходимося на одному з маршрутів каньйону Cottonwood. Насолоджуйтесь разом з нами. На перший погляд простий камінь, але якщо приглянутись, то тут ось можна побачити відбитки старовинних рослин.
Так, офіціаліза.
Місцеві гори чимось нагадують наші Карпати, а часами і Крим.